Hello, beautiful human beings, and welcome to the Ryan Magic Show. We're talking about all things intuition today. I'm going to be exploring what it is, how to access it, what are the different types of it, what are the keys to making sure that you can strengthen it, and what are the prerequisites for it to be converted from symbolism and abstract nature into clarity of what to do next with it. What's the point of it? And we're going to cover all of this in today's episode. It's a vast topic and it's a fun topic. So before jumping in, if you've been checking out this whole podcast, and you've found it valuable, I'd love if you left a review. It can help get the reach out there and allow me to serve more people. And it's deeply appreciated. Cool. Let's jump into today's episode. So the first thing that we need to understand about intuition is that it can only be accessed when one has a conscious awareness and a conscious connection to the spiritual heart. And to understand that connection, we need to understand what the spiritual heart is. So you know that I talk regularly, most likely by now, about the difference between the head and the heart. Essentially, categorizing life into two distinct flavors as us being human beings. One is the human, the other is the being. And one is the head, one is the heart. The head's the survival brain, fear consciousness, and then the other one is fulfillment consciousness. And that is the heart. The heart is our connection, direct and conscious connection to spirit. Now, I'm going to give a few pre-frames around this topic that I feel is important context. We come into this human body from oneness. That's the spiritual heart. Some people call it oneness, some people call it isness, some people call it amness, some people call it the divine, some people call it the quantum if they're more science-driven, some people call it the subatomic world, some people call it God, some people call it the superconscious. It's got lots of different names. It's all the same thing. It's the unmanifest. It is the place through which everything is created, and it's stored infinite potential. Timeless love. And this aspect of life, which is unmanifest, completely complete. It's perfect, it's whole, it's full. It is one. Now, when this intelligence is completely one, there's no separation in it. It's just togetherness. And so it wants to experience all the different unique flavors of itself, all the different infinite possibilities of itself. And the only way that it can experience it is to separate and forget the fact that it is oneness. So, for example, metaphorically speaking, if oneness is the color white, if white has light shine through it, it projects a rainbow out. So even though white is one, within it is all the colors of the rainbow and all the in-between colors of that spectrum. But in order to experience blue, blue needs to separate from all the other colors. On the same token, black's the same. If we get every single color and we combine every single color together, within it's going to become black. But if we just want to be complete oneness, just complete black or everything, then experiencing every color in a big like mixed soup that brings together the color black. In order to experience red, we need to separate and see them in isolation from each other, the different colors. And so as we manifest here as examples, like every other form, anything else that's perceivable is a flavor of oneness, having become separate. so that the universe can experience itself in its unique differences. So that's what polarity or duality is known as, because we're separating and we're bringing them into the two positive and negative charges, as is mirrored through the different ingredients of an atom, with the positive, the proton, negative, the electron, and the neutron. It's got a positive and negative charge. There is that duality, that polarity within it. But in the unmanifest world, it's just oneness. There isn't positive and negative, it's everything. Well, there is positive and negative, it's everything, but it's unmanifest. And so the universe manifests to experience all the different colors. Sure, it's black and it's white, it's everything and it's nothing, but to experience that wholeness as it is just complete wholeness. It can't be experienced in all the different unique flavors of itself without separating itself. So then we can have orange, and we can have burgundy, and we can have turquoise, and we can have jade, and we can have all these different colors to experience. Browns, even beige. It's all different separate flavors of oneness. So what's this got to do with intuition? So we come here in order to forget. We come here, and in order to be able to be separate, what Johnny Pollard has once coined the most powerful force in the entire universe is ignorance. Ignorance. As consciousness, or the unmanifest, shapes itself into manifest form, it needs to forget that it is oneness in order to have the experience of what it's like to be blue, red, pink. In order for consciousness to know what it's like to be a book, it needs to separate from oneness. If not, it would be everything in stored potential. And same with you. You're a unique flavor, or as Ram Dass said, we're all just God dressed in drag. We're all just God or oneness experiencing itself in different unique flavors, different storylines. So we come here for an experience and we forget. We come here, we've forgotten. We come here and have an experience that's unique and separate from oneness, even though we come from oneness and we're going back to oneness. And so that journey back to oneness is what is inevitably happening on our soul journey across this lifetime and multiple lifetimes. And the relevance of this and intuition is that intuition is the flow of wisdom that wakes up within us as we begin our journey back to oneness. So someone can be a human and disconnected from their being because they're more separate in their consciousness, and they're more in the forgetting stage. They're more in the hypnosis stage. That ignorance is strong. But then as they start to wake up and they start to see, then that flow of wisdom where the universe is kind of calling them home with these little breadcrumbs, these little clues of the wholeness that is the truth of what they are and the fact that they are. It's just like, if you've ever seen these movies where someone forgets like 50 First Dates with Drew Barrymore and Adam Sandler, or these other like Groundhog Day, these ultimate timelines where people keep waking up in the same day and over time they've got to try to give themselves clues to remember you're stuck in this simulation. And the universe gives us intuition, these impulses that feel expansive for our heart to start to lead us towards journeys and opportunities of growth, so we can reintegrate parts of ourselves that we've rejected, and we start to recruit or remember, get other members back and put them into our flavor. So we were just green and strictly green or emerald green, and then the universe is giving us these intuitive impulses to be confronted with situations. And now that we're waking up, that confrontation allows us to remember our blueness, and then we mix that, and the emerald and the sky blue together becomes more of a turquoise, and we're slightly more integrated and slightly more whole as we're moving one one step towards back to oneness. And that's the role of intuition. Intuition is a natural opening to divine wisdom when we are at a point where we are starting to see more of the truth of how life works. And what is the opportunity is if we can be in our head, that macro season of forgetting, where we're in the ignorance and we're experiencing ourselves as a different flavor, but we're also suffering because we're feeling separate and we're feeling fear, and we're in survival brain, we're in our head, we're in fear consciousness. There's a lot of suffering that comes from that, because we fly between attachments and go towards this positive, and then real disappointed when we don't get it, and then into the suffering and back to the positive and negative and positive and negative. And it gets to a point where the duality and the experience of forgetting starts to become intolerable, and our heart wants to move back to oneness. So I just took a little look at the timer of how long I've been speaking for in the episode, and it was 11:11. We're right where we're meant to be. Always, but I'm just recognizing that. Let's keep going. So, the summarized context setting here is that intuition is a phenomena of the flow of wisdom and breadcrumbs and hints and clues and signs and symbols from the unmanifest world, from our higher consciousness, through our brain, into our awareness, for us to move on the direction of becoming more whole and remembering, taking the members of ourselves, the different colors that we haven't mixed in yet, and we become more and more whole. And the beauty of it is that when we're in survival brain, we're either moving towards pleasure or away from pain, towards pleasure, away from pain, because that's what we're programmed to do as animals. And we're the human animal. Just like there's a giraffe animal, we're a human animal. But there's not a giraffe being, there's a human being. So as humans, we have the human, we have the head and the fear consciousness. Like the giraffe has fear consciousness. And we have the heart, which is the being of the human being. And that's what is the really beautiful part of this journey of forgetting and remembering as a soul, coming into manifest form, forgetting ourselves, forgetting that we come from complete wholeness, and being in that chapter of ignorance, and then starting to remember and coming back into that, the awareness of the truth of what we are. And when we're in that space, we see gratitude because we're able to experience the wholeness of everything. We can see the beauty in everything. We can see the beauty in the positive and the negative, because we're not at the effect of our fear consciousness pumping us with adrenaline and cortisol to try to move away from a predator, and dopamine to move towards things that are advantageous for our survival. We're able to get some altitude on that animal reactivity and see life through the eyes of God, see life through the eyes of love. And intuition supports us to continue to cultivate our awareness so we can experience our unique journey with a lot of presence, a lot of love. We can manifest the life that is most fulfilling for us, where we're still here separate, having a human experience, but we're seeing the divinity in everything and experiencing it with presence and with love and with awareness. And that's the background behind intuition's utility. It's an opportunity for us to continue to follow the universe's breadcrumbs back to wholeness. Now, that's an important pre-frame, because a lot of the time people trying to use their intuition to make the right decision because they're firmly cemented in their fear consciousness, which presupposes separation and lack. So someone's like, I need better intuition so I can manifest my dreams because I'm not enough without those dreams. Really big distinction to be made here. If you're using your intuition to try to manifest the things that you're attached to because you're afraid that you're not whole without those things that you're attached to, then that's not really intuition, and it's going to be very difficult to connect to intuition, because the thing that's motivating all of it is seeking externally outside of yourself to make up for the illusion that you're not enough and that you lack and that you're empty or incomplete, which is not the truth. And it's very hard to experience the beauty and the magic of life if all of life is being viewed through this subjective bias of fear. And so we want to make sure that we are utilizing our intuition because we desire to feel and recognize our wholeness more and more, coming from a place of love and not fear. And it's okay if you utilize your intuition. It's just going to be difficult to distinguish what's intuition and what's fear thoughts. What thoughts are intuitive and what thoughts are from fear. Right? So just to distinguish the difference now a little bit more practically and scientifically, if we have the unmanifest world, I just want you to imagine that your heart is like a portal. So imagine a photo, or if you're watching this on YouTube, just imagine that my heart here just had like an image, let's say so it's just like a drawn love heart on the front of my sternum. And there is a void into space. You can just see through my heart, and it's just like the cosmos in there. And that cosmos is a metaphor for oneness. Let's just pretend that that's there. And so that wholeness, that oneness, that is infinite stored potential, that's timeless love, that is drip feeding us wisdom to help guide us back to oneness, so that while we're in this lifetime, we can experience the beauty of the manifest world with the awareness that we're whole, not be in the manifest world experiencing it under the illusion that we're lacking and that we're incomplete, so that we're suffering, but actually get to experience everything here from a place of wholeness, so we can really soak in the beauty. Just imagine that your heart is a portal through which the universe can drip feed this wisdom that helps guide you back to oneness, to know what your aligned next step is, so that you can continue to live your most authentic life, your most service-driven life, your most beautiful, magical, synchronistic life. But just imagine that you have your heart and there's a portal where oneness flows and drip feeds the wisdom through from the unmanifest world, just like in quantum physics, an electron doesn't exist until it's perceived. So where does it go when it's not there? It's in that unmanifest world, that field, the quantum. So just imagine that your heart is a portal to the quantum, and through that unmanifest world, little subtle perceptive hints and wisdom comes through the portal of your heart, and it comes up into your brain where you can perceive ideas, thoughts, just where that constant narrative is happening that makes up the way you're perceiving life. You've got your head, you've got your heart, and the information from your head and your heart flow up, and it's just all combined little pockets of knowledge inside your brain. So we're going to use brain as the neutral vessel through which information flows into. So just for simplicity's sake, all of these ideas that I'm floating on this episode are not exactly how everything works exactly, because there's a lot of complexity that I don't even understand, and a lot of complexity I understand, but I'm just simplifying so this is easy to digest. But just imagine that brain is like the screen of a computer, And then there are little words popping up or little ideas that are heart-based ideas, and they're flowing through the portal of your heart from the quantum, from the unmanifest, and these intuitive thoughts coming up on the screen. So some of the thoughts and the words and the ideas are flowing from your heart. And then some of the words and the thoughts and the ideas and the steps to do next and etc., decisions to be made, some of that information is not flowing through the heart, but it's coming from fear consciousness, but also presenting itself on the screen. And what makes up the fear consciousness? Well, there's essentially our subconscious mind. All right, I'm just discerning in my head, how much do I want to share here? So let's say to simplify, let's say there's intellectual thoughts, which are fear-based thoughts, and there is intuitive thoughts, which are love-based thoughts or fulfillment-driven thoughts. And on the screen of our brain, which is just neutral, it's just a housing and processing mechanism and storage mechanism. And so if we are in fight or flight, the amount of information that is pumped into our brain, the neutral screen, there's a lot more fear-based thoughts going in there. Let's say, for example, someone's chasing you, then the head's just filled with fear, 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 fear. And that screen's just big red alarms going off on the screen. Fear, fear, do this. Fear. So even if there was wisdom in that moment flowing from the portal of your heart, even if there was intuition going onto that screen of your mind, what you're thinking essentially, even if there was intuition flowing into it, the screen is going to be so satiated with fear-based thoughts from the fear response that your body's having and your brain's having, that you're not going to see the intuition, because they're just quiet little whispers. Because remember, the experience as a human being shifts when we wake up and we begin our journey from forgetting that we're wholeness to the point where we have an awakening and we start waking up and we start recognizing more and more and more that we are wholeness. And that wholeness, that is, then we have our heart start to feed us these breadcrumbs, which are always there, but the intuitive breadcrumbs that it feeds can only be perceived when there is enough awareness to hear them. And when fear consciousness is active, it's usually quite loud. This is why people that aren't very spiritually awake struggle to meditate. Because when they go to meditate and they silence their life and they stop the distractions, that screen of their mind is overwhelming because it's so loud and noisy and irritating and agitating, and there's so many thoughts and the thoughts are overwhelming. But when someone's a little bit more spiritually awake, they've been able to silence their mind, process a lot of the stress, and live their life more in their heart and less in that fear consciousness, more in their fulfillment consciousness, less in their heart, in their head, more in their heart. And the heart is a lot more subtle. The heart is a lot more subtle because it already knows that it's whole, perfect, and complete. If you think about space and how much distance and silence, just imagine that there is in space versus on a battlefield of a war. Super intense, super manifest, super animalistic, super ignorant, pain, fear, survival. That's like the height of the human predicament. Whereas as we come back into being the source of creation, it's a lot more subtle because it's already feeling quite whole. And we're all just God dressed in drag, all these storylines and scenarios and happenings in the universe, but particularly in our world, because it's what's relevant to us. It's all the play and display of consciousness, which in Vedic wisdom is called Leela. And so we came into this body to have intense experiences. So the universe is like, oh, this is all what's possible. Interesting. It's what it's like to feel pain. This is what it's like to feel hate. This is what it's like to feel addiction. This is what it's like to feel pleasure. This is what it's like to feel joy. And it wants to have the experience of forgetting and then shift gears where it has the experience of remembering all the way back to oneness. So it curves out of itself and then it starts curving back into itself. Interesting, right? And so when someone's in that phase of forgetting, it's loud in there. And the silent, subtle, gentle whisper of the breadcrumbs of intuition, the little whispers from the universe, hey, you're whole, come this way. They're very difficult to perceive when someone's in a very fear-based lifestyle that's reactive and full of attachments and lots of noise in that war versus in space. Very silent, gentle, subtle in space. And so people don't access their intuition very easily in the predicament of the human experience, at the height of that forgetting, that ignorance in the human experience. And it's when they start to wake up and have more spaciousness and process the stress that's causing all that noise through meditation, healing work, then one's capacity to be connected to awareness, less reactive. If you think of someone's all stressed and having an argument with their partner and they don't even know what they're arguing about and they forgot they had something due tomorrow and there's busy, stress, overwhelm, fear consciousness, head. Yeah, that's the head consciousness, the fear consciousness. But then when someone opens up, wakes up, processes that, and they realize that they're whole, well, there's a bit more capacity to perceive the whisper of intuition underneath all of that. And that's important, and that's very powerful. And so we're almost half an hour into this episode. We haven't even spoken about how to access intuition, because it's, in my opinion, it's really valuable and very important to understand what's the function of intuition. How does it even create? Because again, if I just say, hey, do this to witness your intuition, and there is a lack of understanding of the function of it, then you're not going to access intuition, because you're going to be trying to do the steps to just respond to the thoughts of fear in your mind, and they get really confused about, on your screen of your mind, in the brain that's neutral, what's intuition, what's intellect, what's fulfillment thoughts, what's fear thoughts. I can't tell. I'm overwhelmed. Am I getting this right? And all that's coming from the illusion that you are separate, that you are lack, that you're incomplete, that you're unworthy, and that your worthiness is conditional. And so you better achieve all these things. You better get your intuition right. You better get your business start moving. You better find your partner and, use your intuition to get these things, because you're not enough. And until you get them, you're not going to be loved and you're unsafe. Keep perpetuating that fear consciousness, that dysregulation, that overwhelm, that suffering. Whereas, to summarize, the function of the intuition is it's a symptom of waking up. That because of the silence that we've obtained and the stillness we've obtained in our consciousness, the wholeness, that noise has started to quiet down, and we've been able to naturally perceive those breadcrumbs, those hints and whispers saying, come this way, come back to wholeness. And then we can fully embrace the life that the universe has given to us and enjoy it through the presence of the moment, through the awareness of the magic of being part of creation, and being creative potential itself, then the gratitude and the wholeness and the love, the centeredness, the connectedness, the knowingness, the curiosity, it's all so subtle, but so fulfilling. It's so beautiful. And that's what the function of intuition is, to help guide us into more wholeness. So there's this quality that's taught in the Vedic tradition. It's called Buddhi, Purusha, Khyati. And Buddhi means intellect. Purusha means pure consciousness personified, which is like living in the heart. And then Khyati means cut. So essentially this quality it's a quality that's revered and that people feel inspired to embody more, of being able to cut between the intellect and the intuition of the heart. Buddhi, intellect, Purusha, pure consciousness personified. Let's just summarize that, even though it's not this exactly. It's a slightly different function, but close enough. Intuition. So we have Buddhi, intellect, Purusha, intuition, and Khyati, cut. So the quality is to be able to discern and cut and see the very nuance between what is intellect and what is intuition. Buddhi, Purusha, Khyati. To be able to discern what's intellect, what's intuition. And that is a revered quality that's aspired towards for a lot of people in that tradition and people that are waking up. I want to be able to know what is my fear talking and what is wholeness talking. And so this is very, very important. On the screen of my consciousness, there's fear thoughts there. I've got subconscious programming. I've got trauma. Is this idea that I've got in my head right now to quit my job, is that coming from fear or is it coming from wholeness? Is it intellectual or is it intuitive? Is it coming from my subconscious program, my programming, my limiting beliefs that I'm not enough unless I'm successful in business? And it's actually fear-based thought saying quit your job? Or is it saying, hey, there is more magic on the other side of this unknown, of what comes on the other side of quitting your job? Where's it coming from? Is it coming from fear consciousness or is it coming from fulfillment consciousness? Is that thought a head thought or a heart thought? Is it intuitive or intellectual? And that is a very difficult to discern thing the earlier someone is on their journey of waking up. Because again, if someone's just waking up, they've been spending their whole life in separation and in ignorance, and a lot of karma's been accruing. There's a lot of stress and overwhelm in their consciousness, in their body, in their mind. And so their screen, the computer screen of their consciousness, is filled with thoughts, stressful thoughts, overwhelming thoughts, fear thoughts. Can't get it right. What if I don't do this? Oh my gosh, where am I going? And therefore, because there's so much fear, there's so much attachment. And then if there's so much noise in there, it's very difficult to perceive that whisper. So as we start to wake up, we can perceive it more easily. Because our consciousness, a lot of that stress is being processed through meditation and other spiritual practices and healing work. And so someone's feeling generally more whole, more regulated, more grounded, and their mind's stiller. It's still got fear thoughts going into it, but that Buddhi, Purusha, Khyati, discerning the difference between intuition and intellect, that quality, that capability is strengthened because someone has now got the wisdom and the feeling and the essence to perceive what is intuition, what is intellect. Now, like I said, imagine it as a portal from your heart from which wisdom flows, the whispers flow from the divine through your heart and up onto the screen of your consciousness. And we have a bunch of thoughts coming from our subconscious programming. Now, it's important to understand that our survival brain, it's got a strategy for how to keep us alive. And the strategy is pretty simple if I just teach it in a basic way. Every time you experience something, the brain determines it's either good or bad for our survival. So you have an experience where someone slaps you, cool. It stores that and goes, stay away from stuff like that. Negative, puts a little negative bubble on that memory. And then everyone starts clapping and cheering for you because you said something intelligent. Cool, that's a memory, it's going to be stored. Positive, move towards that, that's good for survival. Then you eat all this food, okay, I'm staying alive, positive for survival. And there's just this two humongous lists. Stay away from these things, they're threats. Go towards these things, they're going to help your survival. And it's a formula that our head uses. This is what you need to do to survive. Do more of this, less of this. And it's in a way called a survival script. It's based on the world, your parents. Parents say, go to uni, that's good. And so then there's like positive towards study, education, normal job. And even if the intuition is sending messages up going, art, you've got a gift, go towards that. If there's a lot of fear because the screen of the mind has got all those pre-built, that algorithm, that survival script is saying, no, warning, 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 don't quit uni, warning, warning, warning. Even if the intuition is saying, you've got a gift, move in this direction, and your heart's excited by it, it's a cool experience that your soul blueprint's like, yeah, that's cool, that's where I want to move. If there's big warning symbols, because again, the survival brain, the head is a lot more dramatic than the heart, because the heart already knows it's whole and complete. It's not worried for its survival. It's not trying to fight the head. The head's trying to fight the heart. The heart's just knows it's content. It's just excited for opportunities to experience new things and sees the love and the magic in all of it. The head doesn't see the love and magic in things. It's got nothing to do with love. It's simply trying to keep you alive. And so it's just do more of this, don't do this, do more of this, don't do this. Here's the positive list. This is good for survival. Negative list, bad for survival. Go towards this, go away from this. And so in the Vedic tradition, the intellect is known as the historian. The historian. All it can do is look backwards. And so when we make decisions from our intellect, from fear consciousness, it's not necessarily going to be the most aligned decision. It's not necessarily going to be what's going to be most supportive for us to have the most heart open, fulfilling, connected, beautiful experience. It's merely just what the head goes, yeah, that's going to be the greatest. History has shown this is what's good for survival based on all the conditioning and the patterning. It's a historian. It can only look backwards. And so the strong suggestion from this episode is that we want to be able to recognize and make decisions from intuition, because the presupposition is there that we are whole, and the decision making of our heart is going to lead us on the path that is going to allow us to accelerate our recognition of oneness, and therefore in our lifetime spend more percentage of the time in wholeness, more percentage of the time feeling present, more percentage of the time being able to connect to people, a higher percentage of the time seeing the magic in life. Yeah. And if we look at the top 5 regrets of the dying as deemed by a palliative care nurse that wrote a book on it, people don't regret not giving more and going harder and I should have done all this. That's just the voice of the head, the fear consciousness. That's like, crap, if I don't achieve more, society and mommy, daddy won't love me. And that's bad on the survival script of bad, bad, bad. I'm scared. I'm overwhelmed. I'm dysregulated. What actually people experience on their deathbed when they're about to die and some of that stuff goes out the window and the head loosens its grip, people actually regret the 5 things are, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not what other people expected of me. Not because I was afraid of rejection, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, what my heart wanted, what my unique path is. Yeah. People actually regret that, not regret what the fear said in the moment. Do this because that's what dad said. Do this because that's what mom said. Do this because then people are going to think you're cool because you've got more money and everyone's going to love you. That's fear consciousness. The other 4 top regrets are, I wish I'd let myself be happier, let myself know that I'm whole where I am so I can experience the beauty of what's present, not pressure myself and put myself massively under the pump. And the next one, I wish I'd kept in touch with my friends. I wish I'd enjoyed the connection of life. Next one, I wish I had the courage to share how I really felt, express how I really felt. That can't be done from fear consciousness, because fear consciousness is defending and protecting and scared and controlling and manipulating and blaming and feeling shame, and therefore it's in survival mode. That's where arguments happen from. That's where masks are worn from. That's where people are inauthentic. Expressing how I really feel can only come when we're connected to our hearts. So, and there's one more. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. So all those things are going to naturally be avoided, those regrets, by living in alignment with your intuition that's guiding you to greater richness. And people on their deathbed regret not having more meaning, richness, love, fulfillment, heart consciousness things. They don't regret the head stories that were illusions that we believed because we were scared when we were younger. And so living in alignment with intuition is the most inspiring and powerful way to approach life. And it's only possible to the degree to which we can even recognize what is intuition versus what is intellect. And the only way that we can do that is by feeling more spacious, more whole in our hearts. And the only way we can do that is by doing spiritual practice that allows us to process the stress and connect to oneness. Yeah. AKA meditate. Meditate. Because the more that you meditate, the more you're going to connect to your heart. Meditation is a direct connection to that portal that I was talking about. And you don't go into that portal and hang out and spend all this time and, all these cool ideas are coming up. You're just bathing in oneness. You can't even think while you're there because the thought is separate and you're in oneness. You can't have any cognition. You only realize you were there when you come out of it. But by bathing in that space, then you're starting to familiarize and remember what wholeness exists within everything and including yourself. So it is a fast track to wholeness, which means the more time you spend in this lifetime in wholeness, the more you're able to be present, enjoy it, allow your actual true purpose to come out, feel whole, connect to people more authentically, see the beauty, feel gratitude. It's what life is truly about once we wake up. We think it's about fame. We think it's about being cool and status and money and esteem and all these things. It's not. That's an illusion. It's a part of the process. But if you're listening to this podcast, you're opening up to the truth underneath that. So, what have we recognized? That the purpose of intuition is to lead us to more wholeness, not to give us some clue so we can desperately make our attachments come true. No, that's not what it's about. We know that in order to be able to recognize our intuition, which flows from the spiritual heart, we need to be able to distinguish between head-based thoughts and heart-based thoughts, intellectual thoughts and intuitive thoughts. And the more stressed we are, the more noisy our reality is inside, then the more difficult it is to discern the difference because it's so loud up in there. And so you've probably heard that idea of first the feedback from the universe starts as a whisper, and then it becomes a firm talking to, and then it becomes some serious, hey, this is what's going to happen, listen. And then the universe brings out the baseball bat and you get the karma from not listening. If it's like, this relationship is not healthy and you're like, but I'm just really attracted to them and I need them, and there's all this fear that's making the decision to stay. Over the longer you stay, the more karma there is. And so you might end up getting married, and there's more consequences to separating, the inevitable separation. You might then get married, have kids, more consequences. And it's all perfect. It's all part of the path. But if we can still ourselves enough and live in alignment with the quote, be still and know, then we can proactively move towards greater wholeness and have less suffering, less noise, less resistance, less challenge, and we can embrace the beauty of life more effortlessly. Okay? All right, so the summary so far is meditate, because that's going to allow you to have the stillness. It's going to help you process the stress so it's less noisy out there in the mind. And if you're like, well, I struggle to meditate because there's so many thoughts and meditation is just not for me, I prefer other things. That's because there's so many thoughts. That's not a healthy reason to form a belief and an identity of not being a meditator. That's the person that needs meditation the most. AKA very similar to me when I started meditating. As soon as I started meditating, I would go into a meditation 7 years ago, 6 and a bit years ago, I'd just be angry. I'd be so pissed off if people were making noise. I was so agitated because there was so much stress that I had to sit with. And when I sat with it, it was being processed, but it wasn't this is so relaxing. This is so enjoyable. It was, this is hell. This is suffering. But then I would go to the other side of the meditation and I'd feel so much more present, so much more calm outside of it, and chipping away and being consistent with my twice daily meditation practice for almost 7 years now. It has well and truly changed my life and allowed me to see the wholeness within me, so I can feel just more love, more fulfillment, more presence, more connection, all these beautiful things. So meditate, it's a summary so far. That's not how to access intuition though. So let's actually get into some of the juicier. So the process of accessing our intuition to the best of our ability for where we're at in our consciousness state, where we are in our path of awakening. Again, the more that you've grown and matured spiritually, the easier it is going to be to actually perceive intuition and not think it's intuition, but it's actually a sneaky head trick saying, yeah, do this. Yeah, it's intuitive. Because our head will leverage any story it can. It's got no integrity. Our head, our fear consciousness, because it's life or death for it. Everything is life or death. So it'll lie, it'll cheat, it's not consistent with the message. That's why sometimes you're like, no, I'm not with this person for this reason. And then someone's like, oh, but what about this? And you're like, oh, no, it's the opposite. And there's just no integrity. The head just changes its tune at any moment. Whereas the heart's very clear, very consistent, very reliable. Because it's not life or death. It's just communicating truth. So it's going to be easier to perceive the further you are in your journey. But the process of accessing intuition is step number 1. Get into a state of wholeness. Get into a state of wholeness. In other words, get into a state of curiosity, or the person that I've learned the most from when it comes to direct access to intuition, nothing to do with the spiritual path, but just the mechanics of accessing intuition, is William Whitecloud, who's the author of The Magician's Way and a couple of other amazing books. So, but I don't agree with a lot of what he says. I just want to put that out there. The place in which a lot of the teachings come from, in my opinion, is fear of feeling and also attachment. And that's okay. No, not a bad person, brilliant at intuition, and I just don't agree with everything that he teaches. Anyway, I need to say that just in case one of you go and learn from him and then fall into the same rhythm of attachment and fall into the same rhythm of avoiding emotions and putting the inner alchemy work, the emotional work, to the side, because William doesn't agree with that. Anyway, let's get into his brilliant work. So step 1 is access innocence. Innocence is that childlike wonder where the fear consciousness isn't necessarily as online and regimented, but the child is present and able to play and curious and playing imagination. And so a guided meditation that William does, I can't remember what it's called, but something to do with innocence, is you imagine yourself in the consciousness of a child that's opening their eyes up and seeing things for the first time. And they're just so curious, so open. And following those cues puts us into this state of, oh, I wonder what's next. And the reason that's powerful is because the automatic thing that happens is that the control, because fear consciousness, the main quality that is accessed in fear consciousness is control. Because it's scared and it thinks everything's life or death. So it's desperately trying to get things right and control. I need to get the decision right. I need to know when I'm going to do it. I need to know how. And I'm so far behind. So don't talk to me like this. Control, because it's scared. But when we go into innocence, the presupposition there, if someone is grounded enough, it's going to be very difficult to access innocence if someone's in like a trigger, in a big triggered state. So you need to center yourself and then get into a state of innocence, seeing the world through the lens of curiosity. And when you're in that curiosity lens, the fear consciousness loosens its grip even more. It loosens its grip even more. And that essentially means that on the monitor that I was talking about earlier, the screen of your brain, that neutral housing, the housing unit of your thoughts, is instead of control and pumping that screen full of fear thoughts and what about this and how about that, a kid that's playing make-believe and in dreamland and playing dress-ups, and they are not pumping fear-based thoughts. That control mechanism's gone. They're just fully in that state of innocence, in no sense, not sensing, judging, worrying, controlling, but just looking around and going, what's next? Ooh, I want to see. And so, oh, wow, look at that. Childlike wonder allows us to be detached, because attachment only exists because of fear. And attachment is essentially the phenomena of control. Controlled, and I have to get this. And so that subsides when we go into a state of innocence. So step number 1 is get into a state of innocence. Curiosity is the biggest quality. Because if we're curious, then we lose all that conditioning's big list of this is all good for survival, this is all bad for survival. The rule book kind of goes out the door a little bit. And the more in a state of regulation and heart and presence that someone's in, the more sustainable the state of innocence can be. So for example, if I say, close your eyes down now, take a deep breath, letting it go, and just imagine yourself right now in your inner child, and just see yourself. You're in nature and you're looking around and you're playing around, and oh my gosh, there's a butterfly. You start chasing the butterfly. It's going around the trees and you're ducking and weaving, and it's taking through all these magical flowers, and you're in a field of flowers now, but it's coming to an end. And oh my gosh, there's a beautiful, shallow, glistening stream in the sun with these beautiful, and you're going through and saying, oh, whoa, what's that to your left? You look around, there's a fluffy teddy bear, and over there, and there's this, wow, what's next? I'm in this state of innocence. And then because you're not fully grounded, then you start thinking about what you got to do in that day, because the dysregulation is pumping those thoughts into that screen. So that beautiful, present, innocent, guided meditation is now being overtaken on the screen of your brain, of your consciousness, with fear, to-do list. Oh my gosh, where's this going? How long is this going to go for? And it can kind of hemorrhage the purity of the innocence. So anyway, if you can get yourself really grounded, get into a state of curiosity like that. And any way that you can be like, wow, what's next? Oh, what's going to be in that box? And, oh, I'm opening my eyes and I'm looking at everything and I'm observing and I'm curious. And what does that mean? And where am I going next? That's the perfect foundation to receive intuitive thoughts, because that state is completely open. And that opens and stretches that portal of the heart open, so the whispers, the wisdom, and the intuitive messages can flow through that portal and then enter the screen of your consciousness. Yeah. So that state of innocence is really important. The other prerequisite that's really important is setting a clear intention of what you want to receive a message for. What you want to receive a message for. You can do it vague and just say, give me a message I need to know, and then get into a state of innocence and then see what information flows in. However, if you are looking for a particular clarity in your business and you're like, I love some intuitive guidance. So I always say, dear heart, please gift me the intuitive clarity of what I need to know next in making this hiring decision. And I'm very specific. And you could say, dear God, because that's a personification of the divine. You could say, dear Jesus, please give me some guidance on what I need to know in whether I should go on another date with this woman. And whatever it is, just being very clear. Please gift me the intuitive clarity. Please give me the wisdom. Please give me some clarity. I always say, dear heart, please give me the intuitive clarity of both. And you ask, set that intention, and then get into a state of innocence and curiosity, and then listen. Listen and see what comes through. Now, this next part that I'm going to take you through in this episode is understanding the different types of intuition, the different flavors through which that, because the intuitive message, that quiet whisper, doesn't always come in the form of a sound, but it always does come in the form of a vibration. So if you imagine something going from the unmanifest to the manifest, it starts off most subtle, because the unmanifest is completely intangible and unmanifest. It's recognizable. And so, because it hasn't manifest yet. So it's a non-phenomenal existence. It just exists, but it can't be perceived or photographed or recorded, because it just is. And so when a message comes from that place, it starts very subtle, and then it becomes more gross, more manifest. And so it always starts as the most subtle vibration, and then it becomes more tangible. And then you make it more tangible when you perceive it, identify it, clarify its meaning, and then execute on it. And then that thing that started off as a little vibration can become a real manifest form in your reality. Like, let's say, for example, you're like, what sort of car should I get? The little vibration of the direction to move with it and the little hints. All of a sudden, 3 weeks later, that vibration has created into a car that you're in and you're driving in the manifest world. So, but it starts subtle and it starts as a vibration. But that vibration can then move in different flavors. So there are a series of different types of intuition. And I'm going to tell you them all. And you can just sense into which one you're more practiced in. So the first type of intuition, well, they're not in any particular order, but clairvoyance is being able to perceive intuition visually. Voy, visual, clairvoyance, visual. So that means seeing symbols, and could be seeing photos or seeing pictures or seeing a image, a scene in your head playing out. And that would be the intuition coming through clairvoyance. Clairaudience, like audio, is perceiving intuition through sound. So you're hearing messages or hearing noises. That's clairaudience. Audio, audience. Voyance, visual. Then there is clairsentience, which is feeling. So it's a set emotion. It's an emotion. And that being able to feel. And for me, clairsentience is kind of like sensing, feeling. That's how I kind of remember it. And you can get claircognizant, and claircognizance is just a straight knowing what to do. Yeah, a straight knowing what to do. And I'm just going to double check, see if I've missed one. Different types of intuition. Just intuition. 4 types. No, just said the 4. 4 types of intuition. Where, yeah, for some reason I was thinking, no, there's no thinking. So yeah, they're the 4 types. And you may be really strong in one and weak in the other 3, or you might be quite competent in all of them. So when you get into that state of innocence and you set your intention, you ask for what you desire, and then you listen, you might be waiting for a visual. You just might be open and curious, and it comes through in any of those forms, but it might always come in the form of a sound for you at this stage in your life. Or it might come through visually seeing a symbol or a scene of something. For me, I'm mainly clairvoyant, so I usually see things. Sometimes I just have gut feelings, just knowings, like feelings, more clairsentience. And sometimes I just know what to do. And it's just without a shadow of, it's not because I feel it, it's just because I know it. And that's claircognizance. But I very rarely get clairaudience. I very rarely hear intuitive messages, even though they start as a vibration is sound. So anywho, that is the first couple of steps in the intuitive mechanics. And when the next big step is so important, and that is to make up whatever you got means. So if it's clairaudience, you might be told directly what the answer to your question is. And sometimes you're given signs or clues. And the really important thing about this to understand is that the less it makes sense, the better. Because we're getting into a state of innocence, in no sense. If it makes no sense, it means that it's probably not something you could control with your intellect. So if I do a little tune in right now and I say, what's a topic that I should talk on for the podcast tomorrow? So, dear heart, please give me the intuitive clarity of what it's already coming through so strong. I don't even have to say anything more. I'm just seeing Winnie the Pooh with a honeypot. Now, I haven't thought of Winnie the Pooh for, I don't know, weeks. I didn't say, okay, think of something random. I just started asking the question because I've practiced my intuition for years and years and years, and it's very strong. And I'm also quite still in my mind to a certain degree, depending on whether this trigger is present or not. But I've very much evolved my consciousness through the last 7 years of devout spiritual practice. It just comes in hot. And so then, want to know, what do I need to know for tomorrow? It's a sweetness, fun, something fun to talk about. Think about what you want to do on the podcast that's fun. And if I tune into that for a moment, all I have to do is make up what that means. So, fun, Winnie the Pooh, honey. I know what it means. So I've been putting this off for quite a while because I felt like it's pretty intangible, but I've been meaning to do an episode on the way that I've shifted my relationship with exercise. And that's what I'm going to do. So I'll literally write that down now because I'm bulk doing podcast episodes. And thank you. I literally didn't have another topic. And that just gave it to me. That's the process. But the real key here is you making up what it means. So if you hear a sound and it's like, be strange, be strange, you've got to then go, well, what does that mean? And you need to be able to trust that if the universe, which is infinitely intelligent, knows that you're the one that the message is for, the universe knows that you're going to be able to know what it means. And so it's a real practice to back yourself in determining the meaning and deeming that a knowing. I've had enough practice and evidence now that when I access my intuition and a message comes through, in the past, I was so scared of getting decisions in my life right and wrong because I was so hyper vigilant about being good in life and succeeding well enough that everything had so much pressure, which is a key quality of being in fear consciousness, is feeling pressure. And I didn't have, therefore, much capacity to be detached. And so life was done with so much pressure. And so if little messages were coming in, I'd just be like, but am I sure? And I was so worried about getting it right and the outcome and where's it going to lead? And I didn't back it. I didn't trust the meaning. Whereas now, because I've practiced it more, I can just make up what it means, know that the universe is not going to give me a message that I have no idea what to do with. It's made for me. So I'm going to know exactly what it means. I just have to make up what it means. Then, if I need more clarification, I can say, dear heart, please clarify, what does this mean, this message? And then boom, I saw Tigger. I don't know why I'm saying Winnie the Pooh. But to me, that was just like, it's movement. It's definitely movement. Yeah. And I trust that the reason that Winnie the Pooh came in first, and it's not as about eating honey, is because I know that honey is like an approved food for functional patterns, the modality of movement that I've shifted to. And then but it wasn't clear enough that it would make sense to you guys how Winnie the Pooh would mean that. But it's not needing to, it's needing to make sense to me. But then I just used the example so you guys could see an example of a clarification question. And then it clarified it even more specifically, which affirmed what I already knew by giving me Tigger, which is all about movement. So yeah, that's it. That's the process. Now, why do I need to do that tomorrow, that episode on functional patterns? Because talking about that, it's obviously going to support me with my evolution. And also it's a way that I'm of service, helping all of you guys with your evolution. And it's an important topic because most people have unhealthy relationships to exercise. And there's going to be a lot of wisdom in that episode. So thank you, universe. Thank you, God. Thank you, heart, for that. And another thing is that without sharing what my affinities or what types of gods and alliances, allies I have that support me, but I also personify the heart. I'm aware that everything, ultimately, all the wisdom is flowing from the unmanifest, which is nothing and everything. But the Christian God, the Hindu gods, different animal spirits, different elements, there's all different ways that our soul can feel an affinity towards a personalization of what God is, what oneness is. And it can be really helpful. And I've got different allies that I see as God. And so instead of just saying, dear heart, I say, dear God, but I at this point want to keep that private, what my idea of God is. But you can do that if you, let's say, for example, have an affinity towards the Egyptian goddess Isis. You could say, dear Isis, please gift me the intuitive clarity of blah, blah, blah. Instead of just dear heart or dear universe or just dear God as a blank statement. You can say, dear green Tara. You could say, dear ocean, if you revere the ocean and you want the message from that. Dear whale spirit. It doesn't really matter. It's your game. It's your unique flavor. It's like only making it more rich and digestible by being able to feel a connection to something that's easier to connect to. For me, connecting to oneness and feeling a relationship between the way I see the world as a human and just the idea of nothingness is less juicy, or it's less enjoyable and simple than connecting to a particular figure or a particular idea that's something that's more personalized and characterized in my consciousness. So you can say, dear universe, or you can say, dear heart, or you can say, dear specific ascended master, dear animal, whatever. Okay. But then you set your intention, dear blah, blah, blah. You say what you're asking for, get into a state of innocence where I always just see myself running through nature and looking around different corners and what's buried under there and what's up that tree, and running around, and I'm in a state of curiosity and innocence. Now and then I just listen, and I always get some random thing like Winnie the Pooh or Tigger pop into my mind. And I know that it's intuitive when it makes no sense why that particular figure would come up. AKA my brain couldn't control that. It's too obscure. So it's not like my intellect came in, my fear consciousness is like, you should think of Winnie the Pooh. It's too serious. It's like, should I do this podcast? Is that going to be informative enough? Have you already spoken too much about that topic recently? And it's all like very literal and logical and obvious. Whereas the head is the intuition is very abstract usually for me. And therefore I can decode it by making up the meaning pretty easily. Cool. So a really big key that I want to speak to bring this episode home is the fact that if you're asking for intuition in an area that you are very attached to the answer in, it is going to be very difficult to receive a clear message. If you're like, should I stay with my partner or should I go? If your fear consciousness has got so much fear over what the decision is, it's going to have a fit. It's going to be very dysregulating. And so I perceive that before asking for intuitive messages in an area that you're attached to, see if you can ground yourself into detachment first. See if you can remind yourself of the truth. And if you haven't listened to the Staying Empowered, the Four Hearts Truth Practice, the episode that's titled that, where I talk about the Heart's Prayer, if you haven't yet listened to that, listen to that. There's a truth that I speak to, which is who and where you are is perfect. That truth is a very valuable pre-frame to support with detachment, because it reminds us, it's not that we don't know that where we are is perfect and that God doesn't make any mistakes and we're exactly where we're meant to be. That's obvious when we remind ourselves, unless we're in a massively triggered state where something's happened that we perceive to be terrible and bad, and how can God make this mistake and this is unfair and we're in a victim or something. But outside of that, like I trust that every single thing that happens for a reason. And there'll probably be things in my life that happen that I'm so triggered by, and it's so awful, and it triggers my fear of death so massively that I can't see the perfection in it. But in hindsight, I can always see how the dots connect. And most people can. I've had so many people come to my Heart's Prayer workshops and seminars where I talk about who and where you are is perfect, or sometimes I call that truth, life's unfolding perfectly. and people talk about having cancer and it being the best thing that's ever happened to them, or having a relative that they loved more than anything pass away, and then their life taking a really dark turn, but then a really light turn. And that if their sibling or relative didn't pass away, then they wouldn't be living the fulfilled life that they are. And so they can see the perfection in their loved one passing away, which is politically incorrect in most places, but it's the truth. Everything happens perfectly because God makes no mistakes. So if you can contemplate the perfection of whichever way the direction of what you want intuition on goes, if you can be detached, then you're going to be able to receive the intuitive message a lot clearer. Another thing that's really important is the third heart's truth related to intuition, because the third heart truth is, I'm ready for my next step. And I've been playing with the language of all these a bit. They're definitely not completely finalized, but I'm ready for my next step, or I'm ready to embrace my next step, or I can embrace my next step. That presupposes, I'm ready for my next step, presupposes that we have the clarity and the courage for the immediate next step. But the universe doesn't necessarily give us the intuitive clarity for too many steps into the future. Because the only part of us that wants to know way into the future is the part that's trying to control life. And so that's not the heart. The heart's happy to embrace the magic of the next moment. And so it's the truth is that you're ready to embrace the next step. You're not necessarily ready to embrace 100 steps in the future, because you're going to be a whole different person 199 steps into the future. And that version will be able to embrace the 100th step. But not you. That's a unrealistic, unfair expectation. And so if you're trying to use intuition to control your future, it's not going to work very well. Its highest utility is knowing the next step, the next step, the next step. Yeah. It can be supportive to look into the future and just get a gist of the direction you're going, and getting a gist of that direction and the vision of what your dreams and your heart's truest desires are about. That can be really supportive, because it can create a feeling of where to go next. But it's very possible that the visions of the future, the purpose of that is to inform the next step. And when you've taken a bunch of steps, that vision, if you tune back in, could be different, because its function was always to support the next steps. And then you revisualize a future that's different to the last time you visualized the future, and it informs different next steps. But then you might tune in 3 months after that, and again, you tune into the vision, and the vision's different again. So it doesn't have to stay the same. And that's all good. The part of us that needs to know is usually the part that's feeling scared and unsafe and trying to control. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a lot on intuition. That's a lot on intuition. It's such a fun, magical thing to be a part of, if it's not on a topic where there's so much dysregulation. But your intuition is going to improve over time the more you practice, but also the more that you meditate. The more that you open up your consciousness, create stillness in the mind so you can perceive the whispers more easily, and the more that you feel whole, so you understand the function of intuition more. It gets stronger and stronger and stronger. The less you need to know what's next, the more the universe guides you, because your knowing is so strong, because you don't need to know. It's like Matthew McConaughey says, you can have anything you want as long as you don't need it. And when we're playing in the realm of need and attachment, I need to manifest this, your intuition's going to play tricks with you, and it's not going to be very high integrity. It's just going to be changing on the day to try to make you feel better about what you perceive to be crap about your life. I need to be different because this is not good enough. And when am I going to call in my partner? And my business clarity, I still don't know what my business direction is, and I don't even like this job. That's not a heart perspective. That's fear from the head. And so please receive that you deserve to be connected to your heart. You deserve fulfillment and acknowledging that where you are is beautiful. And that's what the function of the intuition is. Again, it's to take us to that point more and more wholeness and a drip feeds that. Yeah. Not to me, no attachments. All right. Cool. So if you found this valuable, please go and leave a review. That would mean so much to me. I love you guys lots, and yeah, really excited to talk about that future podcast on how my relationship to exercise changed and what I've learned and understood about the structural integrity and movement patterns of human beings. Anyway, that's it for now. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace out.